Do you always believe the evidence of your eyes, or do you sometimes need a little more context before you can truly accept the reality of what you think you're seeing? You might be asking yourself that question a lot while you watch this video. It's full of discoveries that seem too bizarre to be real or too inexplicable to be rationalized. If you love a good mystery, you're in the right place. We're starting off in Iran, where we're checking out the famous Sunken Tower. This stunning astronomical tower was built by a man hailed as the greatest Persian scholar of the Islamic Golden Age. His name was Tusi, and he designed and built the tower during the middle of the 13th century. After he died and the years began to pass, people forgot what the tower was ever supposed to be used for in the first place. Archaeologists of the past have misinterpreted the 100-foot-tall structure as a tomb, a beacon, or just a curious landmark, but we now know it was nothing so commonplace. The 12 walls of the tower correspond to the 12 months of a year. On the days of the summer solstice and the winter equinox, the sun aligns perfectly with the doors on each side of the tower. Using this structure, it's possible to identify the beginning of each season of the year, predict a leap year, and determine the start of Nowruz, which is the Iranian New Year. Far from being yet another boring old tomb, the Sunken Tower is one of the largest and most magnificent scientific instruments of its age. Lake Michigan in the United States of America is a good place to go looking for sunken ships. That's where a team from Northwestern Michigan University was doing precisely that in 2007. They found more than one ship, but the shipwrecks they discovered paled in comparison to the unexpected discovery they found lurking beneath the water. There, hidden almost 40 feet below the surface, was a strange stone structure. The surfaces of these standing stones are coated in barnacles and other sea life, but there's no mistaking the fact that they're artificial in nature. According to marine archaeologists Brian Abbott and Mark Hawley, the structures are approximately 9,000 years old. That's an incredible claim, and yet it might be too conservative. One of the stone features a carving shaped like a mastodon, and the mastodon died out a little over 10,000 years ago. Either the person who made the carving was working based on an accurate description of a mastodon that had been passed down from generation to generation, or they had a real mastodon to use for reference. That either means that the mastodon survived for longer than we think it did, or these standing stones are more than 10,000 years old. The site of Brunnaboyne in Ireland is already well known to archaeologists and is considered a mystical site by pagans. There are all manner of ancient discoveries to be made there, but in 2018 we found out that the site is even more complex than we thought it was. There was a bad drought in the area that year, and during the drought, the grass caught fire and burned. When the fires were put out, it became evident that there was a pattern in the ground. The fire had accidentally revealed the presence of the foundations of an old stone circle buried beneath the ground. The circle is large in scale and is also perfectly round. If the stone circle was made at the same time as the megalithic tombs at Brunnaboyne, it's likely to be around 5,000 years old. That makes it older than the Egyptian pyramids. We can only speculate about the reasons why the stone circle was built. Like Stonehenge in England, it's likely that it was a form of astronomical calendar, but we don't have enough evidence to prove it. The residents of a remote village in Siberia got the shock of their lives in 2012 when an enormous lump of space debris fell on their land. Fortunately, it landed in the middle of the road, and nobody was hurt. 10 years later, nobody's claimed ownership of the space debris, and it still isn't 100% clear what it is or where it came from. The metal object is roughly the size of a Volkswagen Beetle and weighs just under half a ton. One side of the object is capped by a dome. Local news agencies got excited about the discovery and suggested that it might be a piece of a UFO, although obviously that's unlikely. Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, examined the object shortly after it was found and declared that it isn't space technology. That being said, the Russians aren't exactly in the business of telling the truth about their space or military plans. Scientific testing has shown that the object is made of titanium but isn't radioactive. The lack of radiation is another suggestion that it's never been to space. So how could it possibly have fallen out of the sky? Ancient clay tablets inscribed with text written in dead languages are often difficult to interpret. This next artifact is very hard to interpret, but not because of the language it's written in. This is a Babylonian clay tablet, known as Plimpton 322. It's a little under 4,000 years old. The meaning of the markings on its surface remained a mystery for a long time after its discovery, but it's now thought that it's a trigonometric table. If they're right, it would be the oldest trigonometric table in the world. The Babylonians might have used it as more than a simple learning aid. Some historians think that this tablet, or tablets like it, might have been used to calculate angles when building temples, palaces, and stepped pyramids. The artifact was found by Edgar J. Banks in what's now Tel as-Saqqara, Iraq, during the early years of the 20th century. Banks was the real-life inspiration for the creation of the movie character Indiana Jones. He passed away in 1945, and so he never knew the meaning of the numbers on his discovery. Most of them are Pythagorean triples, and have been found to describe the shapes of right-angled triangles using an unusual method based on ratios rather than angles or circles. The small village of Lepakshi in India isn't exactly a world-famous tourist destination, but perhaps it should be. There's a whole world of ancient wonders to be found here, and the technology that went into creating them has never been adequately explained. The enormous human footprint at the start of Sita's trail is a wonder all on its own. It's 3 feet long, far bigger than any human footprint has any right to be, and its origins are unknown. Stranger still is the hanging column. This ornately carved and decorated column doesn't touch the floor. Local tour guides often pass a newspaper beneath it to prove it isn't secured to the ground, and so it seems it really does float. During India's days of British colonialism, British engineers are said to have tried to move the column to find out what kept it in place, but they failed in their efforts. The laws of gravity simply don't seem to apply to it. Elsewhere, there are strange patterns of circles carved into stone, with smaller circles arranged around a larger one at the center. They're presumably intended to symbolize something, perhaps the sun, but nobody knows who made them, when, or how. One way of describing the Hal Saflieni hypogeum in Malta would be as an underground mass grave containing more than 7,000 bodies. That's a fairly grim description, so it might be more helpful to think of it as a beautiful work of art made by unknown builders using incredible skills. Incredibly, even though the 6,000-year-old structure sits barely 30 feet below the busy streets of Malta, it wasn't discovered until someone tried to build a water cistern in 1902. The whole sweeping, curving hypogeum is carved directly into limestone and splits into 3 layers. The final chamber has been designed in such a way that any sound made inside it echoes throughout the whole structure and can resonate within the human mind to affect emotions. This is known as infrasound technology, and its existence should have been way beyond the comprehension of people living 1,500 years before Stonehenge was built in England. Even more mysteriously, the skulls of many of the bodies buried there are elongated compared to modern standards, and testing has revealed that the elongation was a genetic trait. Who were these long-skulled people, and how did they understand so much about sound engineering? The Turin Erotic Papyrus is a document unlike any other. This ancient Egyptian scroll painting has been described by some historians as the first men's magazine in world history. It's not really accurate to describe it as a magazine, though. Back when it was complete, it was more than 8 feet long and is split into only 2 frames, one which shows animals performing tasks usually reserved for humans, and another which shows people in a variety of sexual poses. It's been suggested that the animals doing human tasks are an attempt at humor, although you probably had to live in ancient Egypt to truly understand the joke. The sexual aspects of the scroll might also be a joke. All of the men in the images are depicted as overweight, bald, and short, whereas all of the women are young and beautiful. Egyptologists say that the Turin erotic papyrus was created during the Ramesside period of about 3,200 years ago, and is of such high quality that it was probably intended for a wealthy audience. If the two frames are supposed to create one cohesive message, we don't understand it. In the late 1990s, these technological advancements allowed us to discover a previously unknown ancient city close to Novosibirsk in the Siberian region of Russia. Because it was built on the banks of Lake Chicha, the previously lost city was named Chichaburg. As soon as the contours and borders of the settlement had been identified, archaeologists and scientists descended on the site to take a closer look. What they found was astonishing. Testing revealed that Chichaburg was built somewhere around 2,800 years ago, long before any large civilization was known to have existed in Siberia. Not only that, but it appears to have been an ancient utopia. Large-scale grand palaces were built directly adjacent to the homes of common people, as if there were no difference between the two. The remains of Europeans and Mongols have also been found at the site, seeming to suggest that they lived harmoniously side by side. Who were these people, and what happened to them and their city? Is Chichaburg an ancient utopia where the rich and poor lived side by side with people of many races? There were plenty of other civilizations within contact range of here 2,800 years ago, so why did nobody mention Chichaburg's existence? All we have are unanswered questions. Cleaning up Ground Zero in New York City, USA, after September 11, 2001, was a slow and difficult process for the Americans, both physically and emotionally. Nevertheless, it gave archaeologists an opportunity to explore the ground beneath New York in ways that had never been possible before. In 2010, to their immense surprise, they found an 18th century shipwreck hidden beneath the streets of Manhattan. Based on the evidence at the scene, it's likely that the 30-foot-long ship was sunk and buried at the site deliberately, as a form of landfill as builders attempted to create artificial land in the Hudson River. Parts of the vessel's timber frame were taken to laboratories for further research, where it was proven that the ship was built using wood felled in colonial-era Philadelphia. Despite extensive searches of records from the era, it has never been possible to specifically identify the lost ship. If it had been earmarked as landfill, it might already have been written off before it even arrived in the area. It's possible that there are other old ships in the area that met the same fate, but none have been discovered so far. The City Council of Gloucester, England, decided in 2013 that the city's men's prison was too old and unfit for purpose. They decommissioned it and replaced it with a new structure, leaving the old one to sit empty until it was demolished. Archaeologists were invited in a few years later to see if there was anything worth preserving beneath the prison. It's a good thing they were, because beneath what was once a basketball court, they discovered an entire medieval castle. The castle is estimated to have been constructed around 1100, shortly after the Norman conquest of England and during King Henry I's reign. It remained standing until 1787, when it was demolished. It was very definitely demolished to make space for the prison, but no historians of the time thought to note that a castle had formerly stood on the same plot of ground, despite the fact that the upper portions of the castle were crushed during the demolition process. Many of the ancient walls remain intact, and the lower chambers contain superb specimens of medieval pottery. Some archaeologists have likened the castle to London's iconic Tower of London, although that's really a stretch. The Galloway Hoard is the most valuable Viking treasure ever discovered in Britain. It was discovered in a field in Castle Douglas, Scotland, by an amateur metal detectorist in 2014 and is still being meticulously researched item by item. A carved rock crystal jar was painstakingly cleaned and re-examined in December 2021 at a facility operated by National Museums Scotland. That re-examination found it to be Anglo-Saxon rather than Viking in origin. It's a Roman-style crystal jar from the 8th or 9th century, with the name of an Anglo-Saxon bishop engraved on the base. "Bishop Hegold had me made," is what the inscription reads. This raises the possibility that Vikings raided a church in Northumbria and buried their loot with other Viking antiquities. It also implies that the hoard may contain other non-Viking artifacts. One of them, a silver pectoral cross with yellow enamel work that is unlike anything else in the world, might be the collection's centerpiece. We've always believed the Vikings created it until now, but we're back to square one with no notion of what's Viking and what isn't. The videos we make on this channel are often very specific. They might be about amazing ancient treasures or finds from a particular part of the world. In this video, we're opening things up a little bit. All we went looking for was fantastic finds that gave us the wow factor. We found plenty of them, and now we're bringing them back to you. If you can explain how the incredible Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, Lebanon was built, please leave us an answer in the comments, and we look forward to your new career as an architectural genius. At Baalbek, we can find the single largest carved block of granite in history. Nobody's managed to break that record for at least 9,000 years. It's so old that some even think that the Temple of Jupiter was built on top of it, rather than being an intentional part of the design. The quarry from which the stone was drawn is close to the temple, but there are no visible means of moving the huge stone uphill from one place to the other using the technology that was available at the time. Its total weight is over 1,000 tons, and even then, it's only a baby compared to the South Stone, which was left back in the quarry unfinished. That one weighs in excess of 1,600 tons. The level of craftsmanship that went into making the stones is almost unimaginable and remains totally unexplained. As many of you will know, Columbus and his crew weren't the first Europeans to reach the Americas. Before Columbus made waves with his Atlantic crossing, the Vikings had already set foot in the New World. Nestled at the northern tip of Canada's Newfoundland Island, 8 timber-framed buildings stand as a testament to the Vikings' adventurous spirit. These structures, covered in sod, overlook a peat bog and stream, and they've been there for over a millennium. But when exactly did the Vikings establish the Leon au Meadow settlement? Thanks to a novel dating technique using a solar storm as a reference, scientists have pinpointed the year to 1021 CE, a whole 471 years before Columbus's voyage. This Viking journey wasn't just about exploration. It was also a quest for raw materials, especially timber, which was scarce in their Greenland home. Their iconic longboats, some stretching to 70 feet, were instrumental in this transatlantic journey. The discovery of L'Anse aux Meadows in 1960 was a game-changer, but its exact age remained elusive until now. With this newfound knowledge, we can't help but wonder how much of the Icelandic sagas, which recount Viking adventures in the Americas, is rooted in reality. When practicing, Muslims answer the call to prayer 5 times a day, and they're said to bow in the direction of Mecca. It's not actually Mecca they're bowing toward, but the Kaaba building that sits at the heart of the city. Also known as the House of Allah, the Kaaba has many myths and legends associated with it. But there's one part of the building that's more mysterious than all the others. That's the Black Stone, which is set on the eastern corner. The building itself is thought to be around 4,000 years old and is kept in immaculate condition. Muslims believe that Abraham built the mosque, but many scientists believe it was used by pagans long before Islam existed as a faith. Some stories say that the Black Stone is black because it was given to Adam when he entered heaven, and it absorbed all of his sins. Muslims say it was kissed by the Prophet Muhammad, and so they kiss it themselves if they can get close enough to it during their pilgrimage. It might be all the kissing and touching that's turned it black, but as taking a sample from it to find out what it's made of would be sacrilege, it's impossible to know for sure. Are the so-called Mayan crystal skulls modern forgeries or ancient artifacts with mysterious powers? That depends on who you believe. Frederick Mitchell Hedges allegedly found the most famous of all the skulls in Belize in 1927, inside the ruin of an ancient Mayan building. As the story goes, no sooner had he found it than his native tour guides began bowing and praying to it. According to them, this was a sacred artifact created by their ancient ancestors, and it was one of only 30. The location of the remaining 29 in this tale is unknown. Hedges himself claimed it to be about 3,600 years old and made from polished quartz using advanced technology of the kind we can only guess at today. In 2007, the skull was examined by Jane McLaren Walsh of the Smithsonian National Museum, who concluded that it was made no later than 1930, and might be the skull that Mitchell Hedges is known to have bought at an auction in London in October 1943. Whichever version of the tale is correct, we can all at least appreciate that it's a beautiful object. Legend has it that Royston Cave in Hertfordshire, England, was a secret hideout and meeting place used by the Knights Templar. We can't prove that it was, but we also can't prove that it wasn't. It's a mysterious place, covered with strange paintings and inscriptions on the walls that appear to draw influence from several different places and many different eras. Some of these symbols definitely relate to the Knights Templar, but they're side by side with pagan symbols. The Knights Templar were Puritans and wouldn't have tolerated the presence of pagan symbols alongside their own. So that leaves us with three possibilities. One is that the pagan symbols were added long after the Knights Templar symbols. Another is that this was a secret meeting place for a splinter group of the Knights Templar who held some unusual beliefs. The third is that Royston Cave is a hoax and the paintings are fake. That seems unlikely. The cave was discovered in 1742 and was investigated thoroughly at the time, with most experts concluding that it was a genuine and undisputed product of the 13th century. Without further discoveries at the site, we'll probably never know who created it. The forest of Sacsayhuaman in Peru is already known and respected as a place of ancient wonder. It might be even more wondrous than any of us realize. According to Igor Levashov's research, some of the stones involved in the construction of the fortress show clear signs of being cut with laser technology. There are places where the rock seems almost to have melted, with none of the chipping or tool marks that you'd expect to see if the rocks had been carved by people working with nothing other than hand tools. This is an obvious problem for historians and scientists, as the idea of the Inca having lasers seems ridiculous. It's possible that they had a different method for heating rock up to very high temperatures so it could be carved more easily, but we have no idea what that technology might have looked like or how it worked. It's possible that the stones were already here by the time the Inca came along, and they simply repurposed them. If so, we have to ponder the existence of a pre-Inca race that had access to high technology and yet somehow disappeared from history without leaving a trace elsewhere. The Starving of Saqqara is an enigmatic and ancient Egyptian sculpture currently housed at Montreal's Concordia University, believed to date back to the pre-dynastic period. This limestone sculpture is notable for its depiction of two nude seated figures, likely a male and a female, holding a child, characterized by their elongated heads and limbs. Its origins and the language of inscriptions carved onto its base remain unknown, adding to its mystique. The sculpture's modern history traces back to the 20th century, when it was acquired by collectors Vincent and Olga Diniakopoulos. After Vincent's passing, the statue was stored and forgotten until 1999, when it was rediscovered and handed over to Concordia University. The sculpture's authenticity has sparked debate among experts. However, it is generally considered genuine, though its precise origins and significance are still unclear. Suggestions about its symbolism range from representing Nubians to depicting people exiled from Egypt. highlighting the statue's enduring mystery and the complexities surrounding ancient artifacts. Despite these debates, the starving of Saqqara stands as a symbol of historical intrigue and the ongoing efforts to understand ancient civilizations. During the 1960s, a Turkish man got the shock of his life while he was carrying out some home renovations. He knocked down a wall in his basement and found himself stepping through the hole into a vast, forgotten underground city. Entirely by accident, he'd rediscovered the lost city of Derinkuyu. The city, which is wholly carved out of volcanic rock, is enormous. There are 18 different layers of caves and buildings, descending to a depth of 250 feet below the surface. Mystery surrounds its origins, but it's thought that it may have been founded by the Phrygians almost 3,000 years ago. How anybody was able to undertake such a sophisticated underground construction project back then is completely unknown. The city has been abandoned and then rediscovered many times over the centuries, having once provided shelter for early Christians fleeing persecution from Roman soldiers. Stone shafts that run from the lowest levels to the surface provide light and oxygen, while enormous rolling stone doors mean that nobody could get in unless the people inside allowed it to happen. Is the Iron Pillar of Delhi an example of steelwork that was over 1,000 years ahead of its time, or a happy accident? Scientists have never been able to agree on the answer to that question, and it's possible that they never will. What can be said with certainty is that the pillar, which is sometimes also known as the Ashoki Pillar, has stood proudly and resolutely rust-free in Delhi, India for 1,500 years. The entire surface of the 22-foot-tall monument is coated in an incredibly thin layer of mesoite, which prevents the iron beneath it from exposure to oxygen, which would result in the formation of rust. Quite how such a technically complex task could be achieved by the primitive coal furnaces of 1,500 years ago is unknown. Scientists think that it might have been a freak event caused by the iron mixing with slag, lime, and damp air while it cooled. As the people who made it would have had no idea that the rust-proof coating even existed, they'd have viewed it as a miracle. It took several centuries for anyone to come up with a deliberate form of rust-proofing, so either the Indians kept their secrets or they never intended to rust-proof the pillar at all. The Shepherd's Monument in Shugborough Hall, England, is a fascinating work of art created by the sculptor Peter Shea in 1763. He based his work on the Poussin painting The Shepherds of Arcadia, but also included a short inscription made up of 10 letters. Those 10 letters are now known as the Shugborough inscription, and their meaning has never been decoded. The letters are in order O, U, O, S, V, A, and V. Beneath them is another V, and then below that V is a D and an M. The letters aren't Roman numerals, and if they're an acronym, then it's an acronym that nobody understands. Shea apparently went to his grave without telling anybody the meaning of the letters, and the mystery was once such a big deal in England that the great writer Charles Dickens dedicated several weeks of his life to trying to solve the puzzle. He, just like everybody else who's ever tried, failed. It's generally agreed that the letters represent an encoded message left behind by She, but without a cipher, it's impossible to determine the meaning. Perhaps the impossibility of solving the riddle is exactly what She intended, and he's laughing at us all from beyond the grave for even trying. Are the Dropa stones genuine archaeological artifacts or a well-put-together hoax? We'll never know because the artifacts have been lost. They were allegedly found by a doctor called Chi Pu Te while he was walking in China's Bayankara Ula Mountains in 1938. The drawings he made and photographs he took of them make them look like vinyl records, but he couldn't have been inspired by vinyl records because they weren't invented until 10 years later. While examining the stones with the aid of a magnifying glass, the doctor noticed that the grooves on their surface contained tiny hieroglyphs. He wasn't an expert in hieroglyphs, so he sent the stones to a colleague in the hope they could be translated. According to him, that's when the stones disappeared. They're mentioned as being held in the archives of a museum elsewhere in China in 1974, but the museum later denied ever having them, without explaining why their records said otherwise. Without that confirmation, the only person who ever saw the Dropa stones with their own eyes was Dr. Chipute, and so we only have his word for it that they ever existed at all. Those of you who were around during the 1970s might remember the Betz sphere making headlines all over the world. The steel ball got its name because it was found by the Betz family, who lived in St. George Island, Florida, USA, and discovered it in their garden after a storm. The bowling ball-sized object immediately caught their eye, and so they took it inside to take a better look at it. Initially, they thought it was a cannonball, possibly a relic of the Spanish missions of the 16th century. That theory only lasted until Terry Betz picked up his guitar and started playing, and the sphere started playing his own music back to him. That was strange. What was even stranger was that the ball would roll when it was placed on a table, but stop before it got to the edge, as if it knew the edge was there. These mysterious properties got lots of people very excited about the possibility that it was an alien artifact. It's since been speculated that it's a valve ball of the type used in factory pipes, and it echoes music because of its hollow design, but where's the fun in believing that? As the old nursery rhyme goes, if you go down to the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. In the nursery rhyme, the surprise is a teddy bear's picnic. But the truth is that all manner of weird and wonderful surprises could be waiting for you if you venture into a forest. Some of them occur naturally, whereas others have no right to be there, and their very presence is a riddle and a mystery. Here are some of the most incredible and unusual things people have come across while out for a walk through the trees. If you come across what appears to be a dead human hand poking out of the floor of a forest, do not be alarmed. You almost certainly haven't stumbled across a corpse. Instead, you're likely to have found Xylaria longpipes, which have the charming nickname Dead Man's Fingers. It's a hard type of mushroom, and it grows on and through dead wood. It's easy to see how they got their nickname. They really do look like gray, dead hands. They even appear to have fingernails attached to them. They're edible if you want to pick them up and take them home to cook, but take great care when doing so. Their unusual aroma attracts a lot of insects, which can sometimes include mosquitoes. You'd probably be better off just leaving them where they are. If you can cope with the fruity smell though, and you live in an area that isn't plagued by mosquitoes, they make for excellent and unique Halloween decorations. It's no secret that the Nazis engaged in strange scientific experiments during the Second World War, using both humans and animals as subjects in their cruel tests. Could those tests explain the existence of these terrifying skulls that were found in the mountains of Adygia in Russia? The strange, elongated skulls aren't consistent with a human skull, and nor do they look like any animal we're aware of. To make them even more mysterious, they were found next to a chest emblazoned with the logo of the Ahnenerbe, a secret Nazi society created by Hitler to investigate the theory that Germans were descended from a race of near superhumans. Are these the skulls of deformed test subjects, or could they even have an extraterrestrial origin? The skulls are now in the possession of a small museum in Kamenomostsky and are on public display. The museum is happy to let the public come and look at the skulls, but offers no explanation as to what they might be or why they have such an unusual shape. One theory is that they're goat skulls that have been badly deformed by water, but the same level of deformation occurring to both skulls seems unlikely. Being caught in the middle of a wildfire is a scary experience, and when it happened to Matthew McDermott in his hometown of Sonoma, California, all he wanted to do was flee to safety. As he did so, he came across something that made him stop and stare, and he got his camera out to make sure that people would believe his story later on. It was a tree that was somehow burning from the inside out. Flames licked their way out of holes in the tree's bark, and smoke billowed out from the top of the tree as if it were a vast wooden chimney. McDermott had never seen anything like it in his whole life, and neither have we. He didn't get to spend long with his unusual discovery. The fire was rapidly closing in, and so he ran for his life after he got his valuable footage. It's unknown how or why a tree could catch fire and burn this way. Normally, the fire would start outside the tree and burn its way in, rather than going the other way around. Sam Osmanagic, a Bosnian archaeologist, is positive that this enormous stone sphere he found in the Podibravlje forest of his home nation is the oldest stone carving ever made by human hands. Other experts aren't so convinced. They believe it occurred naturally as the result of a concretion process happening over millions of years. We don't know who is correct, but we can definitely say that it's an unusual sight. The sphere is buried in a hillside, and the fact that it has an orange tone suggests that it contains iron. If it does, that would make the concretion theory almost impossible. Sam has never attempted to move his sphere for a very good reason. It's 45 feet across, and it's estimated to weigh more than 30 tons. Sam may be a little biased. He spends his life looking for stone spheres and believes they're evidence of a lost civilization that possessed advanced technology but disappeared from the face of the earth during ancient times. Whatever the real explanation is, it's still not the type of thing you expect to find in the middle of a forest. When Brent Rawson and his girlfriend spotted this rainbow-colored swamp in First Landing State Park in Virginia, he was awed by its beauty. After he uploaded an image of his discovery to the internet, it quickly went viral. Very few people had ever seen anything like this before, but admiration quickly turned into suspicion. People assumed that such a phenomenon couldn't occur naturally, and so they feared that some kind of chemical dumping or pollution might be behind the so-called rainbow swamp. Fortunately, there's a non-toxic natural explanation for the strange sight. It turns out that the rainbow effect is simply light reflecting off a thin film that can appear on the top of swamp water when decaying vegetables release oils into the liquid. It's a rare effect, but it's known to happen in swampy areas when they go a week or two without rain, and so nothing disturbs the decomposition process. As soon as the rain comes down, the film is broken and the effect disappears. Heading back up to California, here's the Devil's Postpile National Monument. This is another rock feature that people once assumed must have been carved by ancient human hands due to the complex arrangement of columns at the site. But this wasn't the work of humans. It's the after effect of a volcanic eruption more than 100,000 years ago, and was created by lava flowing and then cooling, eventually freezing into these unusual shapes. What we see today is basically a cliff face made of basalt columns, approximately 600 feet thick. The pool of lava is still visible at the base of the columns. Sometime after the columns were formed, a glacier sheared away some of the rock at the top of the columns, leaving behind a polished surface. The longest of the columns is 60 feet tall, and it's the pile-like arrangement that gives this strange geographical feature its nickname. Strangely, there's a complete lack of horizontal joining at the site, which we'd normally expect to see in rocks formed in this manner. This might look like any other plant swaying in the breeze in the forest, but it isn't. Look more closely. It's the only plant in the forest that's swaying at all, and there's no wind blowing. It's moving all of its own accord. The odd plant was found by Jason Freeman and his wife when they went out for a walk in a forest in South Carolina. At first, they found it creepy, but after spending a few minutes with the plant, that sense of creepiness quickly gave way to amusement. At one point during Jason's video, the plant stops moving, but as he reaches out to touch it, it starts swaying again as if it's reacting to his presence. One possible explanation might be found in the little-known American Journal of Botany, which has a section on oscillation frequencies in tapered plant stems. Apparently, every plant has a resonant frequency that can be magnified by wind, even if we can't feel the wind ourselves. Perhaps the craziest thing ever to be found in a forest was a Japanese soldier who still believed he was fighting in the Second World War. Almost 30 years after the conflict came to an end, Hiro Onoda was deployed to the forests on the island of Lubang in the Philippines to carry out guerrilla warfare. But nobody ever bothered to find him to tell him that the Japanese had surrendered, and so Onoda carried on fighting his one-man war until March 1974. Since Onoda came out of the forest, a special route called the Onoda Trail was opened to commemorate his time in the forest, with guided tours allowing visitors to walk through the trees and arrive at a cave, which was Onoda's home for nearly 3 decades. It eventually took his former commanding officer, Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, flying to the island to seek out Onoda in person to convince him to stand down. Taniguchi officially relieved him of duty, and Onoda's long solitary mission was finally over. If a plane either crash lands or is shot down over a remote forest, it may never be seen again. The forests of Europe are probably full of undiscovered fighter plane wrecks from the Second World War, but every now and then, one is discovered, and the pilots and crew can finally be laid to rest. The most recent discovery happened in October 2019, when a search team located a DB-3F long-range bomber plane in the forest of Smolensk in Russia. The plane, which belonged to a Russian regiment, was recorded as being shot down on July 26, 1941, but the wreck wasn't discovered for almost 80 years. The remains of the navigator and gunner were found inside the plane, which has prompted a mystery. There were 4 people aboard the plane when it came down, so it's possible that the other 2 survived and walked out into the forest. If they did, they were never seen again. An examination of the plane suggests that it was downed by a German tank fired from the ground, probably in the village of Demidovo. This is just about the most unsavory thing we can imagine anyone finding out in the woods. For years, in the forests of New South Wales, Australia, there lived a family known as the Colts. Their ramshackle hut in the woods didn't have any running water or electricity, and more than 40 members of the family lived together in these squalid conditions. The secluded home was mostly made up of patched-together tin and canvas, and many of the children had fungal infections on their feet from the filth. To make matters worse, the whole Colt family were incestuous. Fathers had had children with their own daughters, and mothers had had children with their own sons. The younger members of the family couldn't speak intelligible English when the authorities finally raided their forest hideout and took them into care. The whole sorry story sounds like something out of a horror movie like The Hills Have Eyes, but it happened in real life. Several senior members of the family have since been jailed for their crimes. We know that the trees of the world's forests are responsible for providing a lot of the air that we breathe. But have you ever seen a forest floor that looks as if it's doing some independent breathing of its own? You have now. The ground of this forest in Quebec is known to rise and fall during wet weather, as if the earth was breathing in and out. Or the trees had a mighty pair of lungs below the surface. The explanation for this strange sight is that the roots of many trees have bound together and then pushed close to the surface. When it rains and the ground becomes soft, the wind blowing the trees almost pulls the roots up through the ground and makes the surface flex and tremble. It's an incredible sight to behold, but it's also potentially dangerous. There's nothing preventing the wind from eventually winning the battle and uprooting the trees, and when one of them falls, the rest are likely to come with it. As an environmental services director in California, Marc Andre thought he'd already seen just about everything he could possibly see in the woods of Arcata, but that all changed when one day he found a perfectly disguised 8-foot by 12-foot cabin, camouflaged and built in a hard-to-access location. Building such properties in Arcata's woodland is illegal, so Marc was within his rights when he opened the door with bolt cutters, and then gazed in amazement at what he found inside. This well-stocked cabin had food supplies, a cooking stove, books on shelves, and even a typewriter. It looked like a writer's retreat, but that didn't change the fact that it had no right to be there. Marc pinned an eviction notice to the door and returned to the site a few days later to make sure the building had been vacated. He was in for a shock. The whole cabin had vanished, leaving no marks other than the symbol of the worldwide squatter's symbol, which had been etched onto the ground in charcoal. What makes a discovery incredible? Is it the material the discovery is made from? Is it its age or its size? Perhaps it's what it was used for. The truth is, there's no hard and fast rule. We simply know an incredible discovery when we see one, and we like to share them with you in videos like this one whenever it happens. There are plenty of beaches in the United States of America, but none like Papakolea Beach in Naalihu, Hawaii. That's because It's the only beach in the entire country to feature green sand. The color of the sand isn't the only thing that's interesting about it. It's also made of a semi-precious material. There are only a couple of beaches like this in the entire world, and their existence is down to a very precise and fortuitous blend of geology and chemistry. The green sand has been formed through repeated eruptions from Mauna Loa over thousands of years, creating an enormous cinder cone, which in turn created a small bay. The eruptions brought minerals to the surface that would otherwise have remained deep underground. One of those minerals is olivine, a silicate mineral that forms the basis of the green sand. Most of the ash and glass from the eruptions have been washed out to sea as the cinder cone eroded over time. But the chunks of olivine are dense and resisted the tides. There hasn't been an eruption for 10,000 years, so the material has had plenty of time to settle, and the beach is here to stay. Is Lindholm Hoje in Nørresundby, Denmark a stone circle? Well, it is in a way, but it's also much more than that. This field of jagged standing stones contains circles, but it also contains lines and other patterns. Rather than being an ancient calendar of the kind that many historians suspect most stone circles to be, Lindholm Hoje is a huge cemetery that still holds the bodies of more than 700 Vikings. The first burials here actually took place in the early 4th century, long before the start of the Viking Age, but they became more frequent during the Viking era before suddenly coming to an unexplained halt in the early 10th century. The hillside location of the cemetery offers an excellent view of nearby Aalborg, but the city didn't even exist when the last person was laid to rest here. It would have been nothing but open fields. The unusual patterns made by the rocks sometimes appear to be effigies of longboats, with pointed stones at each end. There's also some evidence of large fires at the site, so the stone boats might have stood in for the real thing during traditional Viking funerals. Here's a sad and striking discovery from Yukon in Canada. It's a frozen baby mammoth, and it was found in June 2022. Scientists are very excited by the discovery because the juvenile woolly mammoth is whole. It's the first whole mammoth discovery of its kind in North American history. Experts believe that the animal, which was found by gold miners in the Klondike region of Yukon, is around 30,000 years old. It's been mummified through natural processes. Only one comparable discovery has ever happened in the past anywhere else in the world, and that was in the Siberian permafrost in 2007. Scientists say that the baby is female and have given it the name Nunchoga. It means big baby animal in the Han language of the First Nations people of the area. We owe this discovery to the vigilance of one of the miners, who called out to his boss after he hit something with his bulldozer and immediately realized he needed to turn the vehicle off and take a closer look. If he hadn't, Nunchoga would likely have been destroyed and lost forever. Our next discovery has been interpreted as a sign of a forthcoming disaster by the people who found it. It's an enormous fish called an oar king, and it was found by fishermen in Arica, Chile in July 2022. The creature is an especially large kind of oarfish. This particular example is more than 15 feet long. They live at depths of more than 1,000 feet, and so are seen by humans very rarely. Local superstitions, backed up a little by scientific evidence, say that oar kings come to the surface because of the movements of tectonic plates deep beneath the sea. So whenever an oar king is seen, an earthquake or a tsunami will soon follow. There hasn't yet been an earthquake or tsunami in Chile since the discovery, but perhaps it's still a little too early to be counting our chickens. It's also said that whoever sees or touches an oar king will be cursed, which is bad news for the superstitious fishermen. Chillingly, oarfish were seen off the coast of Japan shortly before the Fukushima disaster of 2011. Of all the things that have ever gone missing, the fabled missing link might be the most famous. The missing link is the theoretical evolutionary connection between apes and humankind, which would prove beyond all doubt that we really did all come from apes. Now, scientists in the Philippines believe they may have found it. Researchers working within Royston Cave on the island of Luzon have found a set of 13 fossilized bones and teeth that belong to a previously uncategorized subhuman species. They've been named Homo uzonensis, and despite being a little smaller than us, they appear to have shared several modern traits. The remains date back between 50,000 and 67,000 years, and so these proto-people would have lived at the same time as Homo sapiens. They were found close to butchered animal bones, which implied that this new species carved and ate meat, and also knew how to use primitive tools. A debate has now begun about whether or not this species was replaced by Homo sapiens after coming into contact with them, or whether these early hunter-gatherers were a unique and different evolutionary strand. During the 1960s, a Turkish man got the shock of his life while he was carrying out some home renovations. He knocked down a wall in his basement and found himself stepping through the hole into a vast, forgotten underground city. Entirely by accident, he'd rediscovered the lost city of Derinkuyu. The city, which is wholly carved out of volcanic rock, is enormous. There are 18 different layers of caves and buildings, descending to a depth of 250 feet below the surface. Mystery surrounds its origins, but it's thought that it may have been founded by the Phrygians almost 3,000 years ago. How anybody was able to undertake such a sophisticated underground construction project back then is completely unknown. The city has been abandoned and then rediscovered many times over the centuries, having once provided shelter for early Christians fleeing persecution from Roman soldiers. Stone shafts that run from the lowest levels to the surface provide light and oxygen, while enormous rolling stone doors mean that nobody could get in unless the people inside allowed it to happen. In 2017, Eric Rintamaki, a geologist and resident of Michigan, USA, discovered a new kind of rock called euperlite. The strange stones are mostly made up of syenite rock, a substance similar to granite, but they look nothing like granite because of the bright orange glow that seems to emit from them. The glow is down to a fluorescent substance called sodalite. It looks orange to the naked eye, but when exposed to ultraviolet light, it turns yellow. The sodalite can form almost any pattern in the stones, from spots to stripes and galaxy-like whorls and spirals. No two stones are alike. The only place in the world they are known to occur is Michigan's Lake Superior coast in the Upper Peninsula, where you'll find them scattered across the eastern beaches between Grand Marais and Sault Ste. Marie. As for how they came to be in this location and why they are not found anywhere else, nobody really knows. It's been speculated that they came south from the Coldwell Alkaline Complex in Ontario via continental glaciation before finding their way into Lake Superior. But if that were the case, we'd expect at least some of them to still be in Ontario. In May 2022, a man out walking on a beach in Ireland found a strange creature washed up. He took pictures of it and then turned to the internet for help identifying it. Despite keeping his name and the precise location of the beach a secret, the story made the national news in Ireland. Members of the public struggled to identify the creature, but so did scientists. Before anyone had a better idea, it had been nicknamed the Forbidden Churro. While it might look like something from a science fiction movie, the most likely explanation is that it's a greater pipefish. That's the most common theory of marine life experts who've studied the pictures, although it's also been speculated that it might be the tail of a sea scorpion, part of a stingray, or maybe even a badly dehydrated needlefish. Despite their name, needlefish tend to be thicker than the creature we see here. Pipefish belong to a subfamily of smaller fish connected to the sea dragon and seahorse families, and tend to be small. But it's not unheard of for them to grow up to 18 inches long. This one appears to be even longer than that. Asteroids come in all shapes and sizes, but astronomers had never seen one that looks like the celestial body that's now known as Cleopatra prior to September 2021. The unusually shaped 160-mile-long asteroid has been compared to a gigantic dog bone and is currently part of an asteroid belt orbiting the Sun between Mars and Jupiter. Cleopatra might not be enormous by the standards of some asteroids, but it's large enough to have 2 tiny moons in orbit around it. According to Frank Marchish, an astronomer at the SETI Institute in Mountain View, USA, there isn't another object in our solar system like it. Astronomers first noted an unusual-looking object in the asteroid belt around 20 years ago, but it wasn't possible to gain detailed images of Cleopatra until far more recently. We also now know that it has a porous structure and a metallic composition, which means it was most likely formed when material reaccumulated after a colossal impact, perhaps even another asteroid hitting another celestial body. Its moons might even have been created by material that's escaped from the surface of the asteroid as it rotates at a near critical speed. So much has happened since November 2020 that it already feels like a very long time ago. For that reason, you might have forgotten about the metal monolith that turned up in the red desert of Utah and captured the attention of the whole world. While it initially seemed like the monolith had appeared overnight, a subsequent examination of Google Maps proved that it had been standing since at least October 2016. As soon as it was noticed, it disappeared again, before eventually ending up in the hands of the U.S. Bureau of Land Management. The mystery surrounding the Utah monolith prompted literally hundreds of copycats, with several other U.S. states and many European and South American nations eventually getting monoliths of their own. None of the copycats attracted as much attention as the original. The origins and initial purpose of the monolith remain unknown. All we know for sure is that it was smooth, well-made, 12 feet tall, and made of a material that kept its shine despite 4 years in the desert. There have been suggestions that it might have been erected by John McCracken, a minimalist conceptual artist who once lived in the area, but the deceased artist's family think it's unlikely. Returning to the topic of amazing discoveries in outer space, astrophysicists announced in July 2022 that they think they've finally pinpointed the source of high-energy cosmic neutrinos. They were previously considered to be one of the universe's great mysteries, but it's now thought that they come from a series of linked galaxies containing blazing hot nuclei known as blazars. The objects, scientifically known as Pivatron blazars, are extragalactic neutrino sources and function as cosmic ray accelerators. Neutrinos have a mass of almost zero, are electronically neutral, and interact with almost nothing else in the universe. That's why they're nicknamed ghost particles. Despite being almost impossible to observe, they're among the most abundant particles in the known universe. Normal neutrinos are produced by radioactive decay, for example, the byproducts of nuclear reactions that happen inside the Sun. High-energy cosmic neutrinos are 1,000,000 times more energetic than any neutrinos produced by our Sun, or even the neutrinos produced by any known supernova. They interact with so little that by using modern technology, we've been able to trace them back to their source because they travel in an almost perfectly straight line. In the case of the neutrinos that were studied in July 2022, those straight lines took us back to the nucleus of a huge galaxy with an active supermassive black hole at its center. In the summer of 2019, a farmer named Tom Giddens felt his plow strike something solid when he was working in his field in Sampson County, North Carolina, USA. When he got out to investigate, he found this battered, heavily eroded stone face. He immediately knew he was out of his depth, but understood that he might have discovered something historically important. That prompted him to get on the phone and call in the experts. But unfortunately, the experts he spoke to didn't know much more than he did, and they still don't. The carving is large, almost 2 feet across from ear to ear, and closer to 3 feet from the top of the head to the chin. It's the fact that it's made from sandstone that makes it so hard to date. The substance erodes very quickly because it's soft, and so this could be as comparatively recent as a century old. Or it could be more than 1,000. Archaeologists might be able to offer a better guess if the design was familiar, but it isn't. Nothing like this has ever come out of the ground in North Carolina before, nor anywhere near it. It might even be the work of an ancient fraudster. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!